Stage. My name is Matt Coyne from Waves Connect. I'm hosting your stage today. Before I hand over to Rachel, want to say a thank you to Choose to Rent, the main stage sponsor. They are straight down and to the right a little bit, so definitely please go and visit them. For your listening pleasure, you've got the Silent Seminar headphones. You can hear a little bit more better. It's not too loud in the venue right now. There's multiple language as well, so please do see Meg if you want Spanish, French and German, I believe. We also have closed captions on the right-hand side, so if you need to read those as we're going through, please do sort of sit on that side. You can see that a little bit easier. And there will also be a live Q&A with Pigeonhole, so scan that QR code. There's so many instructions. There's an oxygen mask also coming down through the middle in an emergency. Scan the QR code and you can ask any questions to the panel anonymously. So I will hand over to Rachel, Head of New Business at WorkCast.
Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping you are enjoying Event Tech Live as much as we have. This is the second year that we've been here. Last year we exhibited. This year we thought, why not? We'll go out on a limb and we'll do a talk as well. So thanks for joining us today. We're here to cover a topic that we think is really relevant at the moment. Integrations is really at the forefront of everything at the moment, whether it goes from reporting and analytics right all the way through to AI. There's a lot of that around here I've seen today, which has been exciting. So before we dive in, I'll introduce myself. As you just said, I'm Rachel. I am Head of New Business and Marketing here at WorkCast. I've been there for 7 years. The company's been around for 13, nearly 14 years. We've got an exciting lineup of panelists today, as you can see. So before we run through the introductions, let me introduce the two companies that are in front of you today. So WorkCast. We are an online events platform. We help people deliver their digital event programs, whether that be webinars, live streams, virtual events, hybrid events, CPD programs as well. We work with global organisations, and that's a range of industries from pharmaceutical, finance, associations, and publishers. So then we move on to Tray. So Tray, we've actually partnered with Tray for probably the best part of 18 months to 24 months now. They really helped us tap into integrations. And the way that Tray works, is through their connectors. They have around 600 connectors, which is fantastic. It helps all of your cloud stack integrate and speak to one another, which we think is obviously how things are being driven at this moment in time. So let me dive in and let's introduce our panelists. They will introduce themselves. I will hand over to Tray. Luke, I'll go to you first.
Sure thing. Oh, I can hear myself in the headphones. Sorry, I made myself jump. But I'm Luke. I'm a solutions architect here at Tray, so I work very closely with our customers, covering their automation and integration requirements. Over to you, Grace.
Thank you. My name's Grace Birdie. I'm the EMEA sales lead at Tray.io. I work very closely with Luke and our wonderful customers, such as WorkCast, to explore and build out their integration strategies at scale.
I'm Stewart Kibby. I'm the managing director of WorkCast. I guess I'm the kind of culprit who introduced Tray to begin with. We really wanted to become integration experts, and I think we've done that through our partnership with Tray. I also get quite hands-on with Tray myself, so I design some of the integrations, which is really kind of a useful experience on both fronts.
And I'm Vicky Anderson, so I'm head of customer success at WorkCast. I've been over 5 years now in different roles, and I'm very hands-on with building, creating, and designing our integrations with Tray. So.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So, to kick off the discussion, integrations can mean many things to many different people. Within this context specifically, we are obviously talking about events, from ticketing, hybrid, registrations, CRM platforms, how we link everything together within that realm. So just to kick things off, how many of you have wanted an integration but haven't set it up yet or even researched it yet? Any hands? Perfect. Brilliant. That's kind of what we expected. It's something that we speak about with our clients and prospects on the day-to-day. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into sort of the intricacies around integrations, what are the obstacles, how to overcome them, and where we can go from there. So, my lovely panelists, first question for you guys is, what is the biggest issue when implementing integrations? Or what do people think are the biggest challenges when it comes to integrations?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think one of the big things when we're certainly speaking with customers is just the amount of time it takes to do integrations traditionally. So we've got some good figures that a lot of people we speak to, it's on average around 3 months for them to spin up a new integration, which is obviously a very long period of time. And so when you're looking at trying to prioritize that and the mountain of things that end up, projects that you would like to be able to do, integrations can very quickly go down that list when it takes such a long time to be able to spin those up. So certainly I think the time it takes to spin them up is a big challenge that we see.
Brilliant. And I guess when it comes to that as well, the other thing that when we come to speak to people about integrations, there is quite a lot of fake news about integrations. There's a lot of noise around integrations out there, so it's kind of down to us to wade through and figure out what's going on there. Stu, a question for you. So when we're talking about integrations, what do we actually mean in the context of the event industry specifically?
Yeah, I think there's huge misconceptions about what an integration is. It's really, I think what people think of as integration is pushing data from one platform to another. So pushing data from your events platform like WorkCast into something like HubSpot or Salesforce or Marketo. And that's really the tip of the iceberg. That's the most basic integrations. We've been doing those types of integrations for 13 years, really, probably since we started as a company. The new generation of integrations is about true interoperability, really taking the best of your event and building it into your marketing stack from top to bottom.
Yeah.
So embedded in your website, pulling data between all of the platforms you use, potentially running your event natively within the platform that you use for marketing. The opportunities are really profound. And I think so one side of it is making it as embeddable as possible. The other is actually being able to embrace the best of breed technologies and pull them into your events. So it's really two sides of a really interesting coin.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, you're touching on the fact that you can embed integrations as well, because again, how they actually work and how they pull together can change from platform to platform as well. On that note, so when we are talking about integrations, what integrations are actually typically requested within our space?
Yeah, I can take that. Ironically, it's the ones that Stu just described as the tip of the iceberg. So those data integrations are the ones that are requested the most, because I think it's the ones people think of the most, to be honest. So, and our customers want their data to be seamless for their registrants, for their attendants, and for their internal teams, essentially. So we have a lot of integrations about registrations coming from different platforms into ours, and then a lot of registration, attendance, and engagement data coming out of our platform into others. So first up, we're thinking about Eventbrite, Pardot, and then in terms of data coming out, we're thinking of things like HubSpot, Salesforce, but also in terms of visualizing their data. So Microsoft Dynamics, Power BI, etc. They're the main things that we get asked a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen clients, the likes of Three-Sided Cube, they've really like different elements of different platforms that they use, but they want to bring everything together. They don't necessarily want to pigeonhole themselves. Pigeonhole, please use it. They don't want to pigeonhole themselves into just using one specific platform for something, because it may limit them in certain types of their journey. So yeah, one of our clients, Three-Sided Cube, they went for Eventbrite for registration, our platform, for their webinars, and then they went and pushed the data to HubSpot to move on with that data. So that's a perfect example. And I think what we also find is a lot of small and larger corporations, they create integrate beasts that are no longer feasible with modern tech. And that's another thing that people are a little bit scared of at the moment when it comes to those larger corporations. They find it really scary to move away because of that amount of sheer data that they have on those platforms. So it's about speaking to them, and they can understand how they can use even bespoke APIs to move away and across from them. Luke, I know you've had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, so we obviously we have, as I mentioned at the start, we have over 600 connectors on the Tray platform. So you can start to think there's pretty much an exponential amount of combinations that can come with that. So we see a multitude of use cases, some of the systems that have already been mentioned being requested quite heavily, but there is also that other aspect that, of course, that's great for your own internal tech stacks, but a layer that we have here at Tray is around those embedded integrations. So how, as part of your own products and services, can you provide those integrations to your customers, whether that is kind of on a bespoke basis or making it part of sort of your product to make sure that you can adhere and require those requests when they do come in.
Perfect. Thanks, Luke. So I guess when you mention iPass, I'm going to pick on you a little bit further. Can you delve a little further into what an iPass actually is?
Absolutely. Everybody loves a good acronym, but when we're talking about iPass, it's Integration Platform as a Service, effectively. So it is a tool that's designed to help simplify your development for these integrations. Now, like we mentioned, there is a huge amount of time that goes into developing these natively, so the idea of an iPass is being able to simplify that process. So a big part of, certainly on the Tray platform, we have a really nice visual interface and a visual builder to help you build out those integrations in what we refer to as a low-code manner, effectively. So really simplifying it so that you don't need to be a developer coding all of these integrations. It's very much a very visual interface to be able to build those up as you are going through. And then when we're talking more specifically around embedded iPass, it's again, how can you take integrations and have that as a product feature that you've got so that you can provide those to your clients as well.
Brill. And on Stu, we had a conversation yesterday about this, and we were talking about how essentially it's a low-code requirement when it comes to using these sorts of iPass solutions as well. So that has helped us in particular with our use case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, implementing an iPass was very much about trying to not use our core engineering team to do integrations. There are thousands of integrations that we want to do, and that sometimes a single customer might need 3 or 4 of them. So actually moving away from very expensive in time terms engineers and being able to do things more with a business analyst skill set, which is better for the customer because we actually understand what needs to be built, and it's much quicker to implement it because we use the no-code solutions to do that. But I think just picking up on a point Luke made, the final piece, in addition to be able to build the flows, one of the really valuable elements is the ability to take data from the customer via the platform in the embeddability piece, and then trigger the workflow in a way which is specific for a given customer. That combination is powerful.
Yeah, I would kind of echo what Stu said about that we don't need engineering. So as a non-engineer myself, and I don't think my biology degree is going to come in too handy with everything I've been doing, but it's something I can do. It's more kind of a logic workflow, so it's been really useful and really exciting to know all of the things we can do, and it makes it a little bit more what we can offer our customers, and it means that its maintenance can sit outside of engineering as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I know, Grace, you have some thoughts on this as well, but it allows a lot of company sales teams to have the power of yes when they have these requests coming through from clients. It really allows you to not necessarily have to revert back to your engineering and integrations teams as to whether you can or not. It really helps you say yes on the spot, and it really helps drive that revenue and that growth for your company. So it really opens sort of the aspirations, I guess, for the company itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, to echo what you've just mentioned there, Luke and I deal with a lot of customers who maybe they have, to your point, Stu, they've previously natively built out a number of integration capabilities, but they're looking to move into new markets or new territories, and they recognize that those new prospects that they're trying to target, their new ideal customer profiles, are maybe leveraging tools that sit outside the native integration that they've already built. So again, leveraging a tool like Tray, whereby you don't have to go to the already, I'm sure, stretched engineering team and put some new integration requests on their plate, by actually being able to leverage somebody that's got a more, you don't need to have a full developer skill set, but a technical aptitude and an understanding of like what you want the data to do, where it needs to go, being able to leverage that team to build it, those strategic requests, as you say, makes it way more powerful when you're dealing with a late stage prospect, to be able to say, we can connect, and this is how quickly we can do it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think as well, when I know we spoke, Luke, yesterday about putting something visual to clients as well, and showing them, yes, we can give you a solution to something that you're looking at that is relatively small right now, but look at what you could do and look at where you could take these integrations over time. And it's just visualizing it, letting them see that it isn't scary. There's so many options, but it is really straightforward. It's just letting people know your expectations and what you eventually want to see, and what your aspirations are with the business. So let's take a closer look at the integrations. For those of you who are visual learners, you can see a snapshot behind us, and it'll take you through one of the workflows that we use internally. Vicky, could you walk us through what is happening here, please?
Yeah, so it's on a loop. If anyone does miss anything that showed up as well, it will come back round. So one of the examples I talked about in the beginning was Eventbrite. So some of our customers really wanted to use Eventbrite's amazing ticketing system. They already used Eventbrite for some of their events, using different providers before us. So it's something we really, really wanted to build. So the aim of that integration, in its simplistic terms, was to move registration data from Eventbrite into the WorkCast platform. And having Tray in the middle of that really helped us build that in a really simple format. So it's a couple of small workflows, and the main workflow in there is actually a webhook from Eventbrite that every time someone registers, it then pushes that data via Tray into the WorkCast platform. So very seamless, very, very quick as well. And then the other example that we've mentioned a few times actually is HubSpot. So this is actually an integration that we already had built by our engineers years and years ago within our platform. And obviously, with engineers, you want them to focus on the new shiny things and the maintenance of your platform. We don't want them to spend all this time looking at integrations if it's something that we can take away from them. So the HubSpot integration, we decided to move away from engineering, move into Tray, and it coincides with changes HubSpot's made to their authentication. So it's something we needed to look at anyway. So having Tray in the middle of that, it's a few different workflows. The aim essentially was to move all of the registration, attendee and engagement data from HubSpot into our platform, the other way around, from our platform into HubSpot. So essentially it could be used for marketing, looking at leads, compiling their data, etc. And it is just a few small workflows in the middle, and it really allows our customers to use that data however they wish.
Thanks, Vicky. Moving on from this, if we go to, when we want to talk about, so you were talking about the opportunities that come from here, and there's lots of them. What further opportunities do we think that will come out of these from event companies, or for event companies, and in the industry work with an iPass solution?
So I think if that's for me, I think the real opportunities start to go from this point forward. I think syndication of streams is a really interesting world. Most organizations want their events to go to lots of different places. So by using something like Tray, you can handshake with all, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, your own platform, your website, and push the same stream to multiple places at the same time. And to do that, you have to do lots of handshaking with all those platforms. So the more places you want to syndicate it, the more integrations become important. I think the other side of it is, as you've touched on, AI in general, best in breed features. We want to be pulling those into events. So AI in terms of things like content augmentation before the event, during the event, after the event, and using AI to do that is a really powerful world. And again, we can handshake and we can do that integration work through a combination like Tray. And then, and finally, I think it's that best in breed of embeddability and pulling in the best in breed technology so that your events can stand out from everyone else's events.
Absolutely, and I know, Vicky, because you work so closely with the customers as well, you also get to see an insight of what we should expect, anticipate.
People want a lot more from their reporting. They want everything to be seamless. They want everything to be automated. So there's so many opportunities, and it's exciting to see so many opportunities that we can look at with where people want their data to go. Whether it's just for their marketing, whether it is just re-looking at how their own strategy currently works. Even having, it would be amazing to have an event go out in our platform, but also on LinkedIn and HubSpot and lots of different places at the sthem time, and for them to be concurrent, but through an integration.
And integrations allow, I think, clients and customers and everyone here to chop and change between different platforms for different options. You don't necessarily have to choose a solution and stick with it. You can move around, and that's what is good about integrations, because they're made to be so easier. With the likes of an iPass now, people can transition between different things a lot easier than definitely what was in the past, because I do think people did like to go down the bespoke route quite a lot because it sounded good, but now, because you can see of all the tech that we have here, you want to kind of dip your toe in the water every now and then with something different. Luke, I know you have quite an interesting take on this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's obviously I think you said, there's a lot of tools out there that do their thing really well. You know, they're on their own little islands, but really when you start being able to basically combine those islands together, it unlocks a tremendous amount of possibilities. And certainly at Trey, we have a slide that we use sometimes. It's kind of like the art of the possibilities. It's like, how many words can you try and fit on one slide without having too much on there effectively? Because really it does unlock a tremendous amount of things and a lot of new use cases that perhaps you haven't thought about before, or a lot of interesting ways in which once you start combining that, it's just a whole extra texture and layer that you can leverage.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess from an AI perspective, it's been mentioned a lot, it's everywhere here as well. Let's talk about that, let's talk about the future. How do we think this solution will impact everything, and what are the pros and cons of that in this particular environment, in this particular industry with what we're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I certainly take that from a trade point of view. So we're seeing AI being kind of a fundamental underpinning on our platforms. So we've already covered that, of course, we have a very visual builder, but we're taking that a step further. And if natural language automation rings a bell, it's basically being able to ask, effectively your own little helper, how can I achieve something? So how can I build out this integration and have someone, obviously it's the AI, but almost like having a partner in crime next to you who's able to help you, give you suggestions about how to do things. And it's just further being able to basically make it even easier to build out your integrations and further increase that velocity. But also it is in itself a whole new and potential interface into these systems. So being able to ask, we call it Merlin, it's got an adorable little icon, but being able to ask Merlin effectively, hey, go into these systems that I've got, pull back data from several different places and summarize that in a table for me, but only needing to do that in natural language means you don't even need to worry in some respects about a loco builder. You can just ask it in, obviously language that you're most familiar with, which is natural language.
I think just going back to one of the questions that the points you made at the beginning of the talk, which is some of the biggest challenges that businesses have when it comes to tackling their broader integration strategy, it can often come from the fact that there isn't a central team that is responsible for the integration strategy and then subsequent build and maintenance, or indeed just initially like getting it off the ground. And we're absolutely seeing AI being applied and making super technical builders' lives a lot easier by knowing, as you put it, you've got this kind of sidekick that's actually sort of an extra set of eyes into the tool to be able to help builders get up and running more quickly. So it's unlocking a lot more possibilities for less technical folk to build.
Absolutely. And I think simplicity is key as well. Since the pandemic, and I don't know if anybody feels the same, but since the pandemic what we saw is that people wanted to have everything a lot simpler, but they wanted more, and they were trying to find a way in which they could achieve that solution. And so I guess this is how the rise of this solution in particular is definitely helping, because of all of the plethora of options that are out there, and how can people make the most of it. WorkCast, my friends, you also have some thoughts on this as well, don't you?
Yeah, I think AI is going to hit us all in lots of different ways, and I think in the event space, it's how do you embrace AI and pull all those incredible features into your events and into your event life cycle. And at WorkCast, we're very focused on not just a single event, a single point in time, but much more your annual event life cycle and your multi-year event life cycle. And that's where you really start to get some huge value from it. For example, you can run a webinar, you can push the recording of that webinar through an AI solution who will generate metadata for you, which will become the searchable index for you. So the whole life cycle is really improved by using that. And then you can go into the kind of live stream manipulation. Virtual backgrounds are obviously an obvious one there, but that capability I think can just be expanded and expanded. So you can manipulate the streams in real time with AI, you can manipulate the recordings pre and post, and you can manipulate the data, and data augmentation or content augmentation is enormous. From running one webinar and understanding an attendee's interaction with it, you can actually identify when they're most engaged, and you can run that past AI. You can then see which elements of your event they're interested in, and have a lot more fidelity in the leads that are created. You're not being spammed anymore because you're actually being picked up for what you really care about. So I think that the journey is enormous, and I think we're right at the beginning of that journey, but it's taking events and the good stuff which is done on events platform and building it into that much larger marketing ecosystem so that it feels like a core part of that ecosystem.
I agree. And I think, and Vicky and Grace, I think both of you would agree in terms of, we feel like in the consumer industry, AI is booming at the moment. There's a lot going on there. But within the corporate world, people are still a little bit hesitant. So it's almost kind of it's our responsibility to show them what they can do and what the opportunities are with that. And it's going back to those visualizations of what is actually possible from that. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like we have a couple of questions in, so I'm going to go to those questions. We have had some questions asked to us throughout the event, so I'll also go to some of those questions as well. But let me just get up Pigeonhole. So let's have a look. It's just reloading for me. I know they're over there. Oh, we're loading. Give me just a second. Perfect. So first question is, what is the most creative integration you have seen someone use for an event? That's a good one.
It is a good question. There's actually, I'll do two-sided to that.
Yeah.
So there's kind of creative in the classic sense, and there's creative in how you overcome problems. So one of them that we're working on just now, there is a certain CRM system used in the legal profession, and it's a very closed shop world. Smaller companies can't get access to it, can't do certain things. But by using Tray and some other integrations that exist out there, actually we've been able to unpick that world a little bit, build an integration without really the cooperation of everybody involved, because we've had access to the customer's access, and therefore we can use that access to leverage data, push it around. So for us, in a pre-sales world particularly, or existing customers actually, it's allowing us to unpick locks that we wouldn't be able to do. I think in the event space, it's that use of AI and syndication. I've talked about it a few times.
Yeah.
But within that world, we can literally syndicate a live event to 1,000 different places if you know those 1,000 different places and you have the access for those 1,000 different places.
Yeah.
So making that much more a mass market solution, so that there's no longer any custom work to do, it's truly integrated. And I think there's a place for AI in that. Once you've built a LinkedIn integration, it's not a huge leap to do a Facebook integration. So actually, I think using some of the AI capabilities, pushing and syndicating content everywhere is a much easier thing to do.
Yeah, perfect, great. And another question that we've had through, which I do think is really interesting, it is one that we have been asked already during this event, is what do you think the biggest reason is people take a while to implement integrations? And we spoke at length about this yesterday. From a new business perspective, a new sales perspective, and welcoming someone on board initially, the obstacles I would say initially are just they think it's going to be overcomplicated and more complicated than what it actually is. They're worried about what is involved. And I think what it actually is at the moment there's a lack of how to get started. There's a lot of noise around what integrations are, what integrations you can have, but there's not a lot of guidance generally out there on how you start from the very beginning, especially if you aren't an engineer, if you aren't into coding. It does sound overwhelming. Grace and Vicky, have you got any more thoughts on that? That's definitely how I feel it is.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said there. And again, if I think about a lot of the customers that Luke and I support, it is some of the reticence. It can come down to the fact that the integrations they're not owned by a central team. Like the initiative doesn't necessarily, there isn't like a core integrations team within the organisation, and the requirement and I guess the pain points are felt by if we're talking about like integrations internally within an organisation, it could be different lines of business are feeling the pinch of using lots of best-in-breed tools for different things, but then those best-in-breed tools not speaking to one another, and again, not having the technical aptitude to be like, well, how do I connect my Slack to my Salesforce, or how do I connect my HubSpot to my Microsoft 365 instance? But then I think that the other side to that is for product-led businesses, whereby again they've got an engineering team that I'm sure are gunning to advance their product roadmap as quickly as is possible. Yeah. Again, taking core engineering time and focus away from your core IP to wrestle with some APIs and set up some new integrations can feel not like I'm loath to say waste of time, because it can be really, the results of it are really powerful, but again it's about the time that's then sunk into that initial setup and subsequent maintenance. So I think it's a nervousness and lack of technical ability, and it's a lack of prioritization, I think, that is often what sort of means that they're kind of at times left behind, which leads to quite a lot of debt, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with a lot of that. When we started setting up integrations away from engineering, it took a little while to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of who owned it even, to who owned the maintenance. And we've got a kind of small team that runs that internally now. But I think one of the main things, in my opinion, why it takes a long time is I think it's very well to say, oh, I want this platform to communicate with this platform, but it's actually pinpointing what you want, of what data do you want going to here, or what pinpoints do you want talking to each other, and then sometimes it's a bit of a struggle to get your API data or things like that, which is really where you've come in handy with the Tray platform in the different authentication routes you can kind of go down. But I would say it's maybe someone further up says we need this, but we don't actually know what points you need.
And I think most recently we were on a call with a client and they literally drew us a diagram of what they wanted. But when I say diagram, it was very simplistic, but it helped us understand what they needed from us. So don't think that people will, there's never a stupid question when it comes to integrations, because it still is so new and fresh for a lot of people. If you don't know what you want and you need guidance by just even explaining the company OKRs, the company goals, the company objectives, what kind of data drives your company forward, let that company know who you could potentially be working with, and then they can advise and they can suggest options as well, because they're working with their clients day in, day out on this. So that's some advice that I would give, especially on that. Another question that we've got here, which is interesting, is why did WorkCast choose Tray as their integration partner? Because we love them.
No, that's a really good question. We did a lot of work. We actually looked at 5 or 6 different platforms. We had, our specific requirement was that not using engineers to do it. There are lots of ways to do integrations, but the key thing for us was bringing the total cost of ownership down and bringing the flexibility down. What we needed was in a few days to do a prototype integration, and within a couple of weeks have done a fully tested, fully baked in, embedded in the platform integration. And that became the key requirement. So, building workflows is easy, and lots of platforms have the ability to do that. But being able to do it without the support of engineers and be able to do it that you can integrate with 600 other features, and so eventually we just kind of narrowed it down. And I think the final close for us really was how simple the user interface was, that it is a visual building tool that you then configure, and that allowed us to say, okay, it's not actually really expensive time-limited engineers we need now. It's business analysts understanding the business problem, and that shifted the whole thing for us, and that's been huge.
And Tray probably don't realise it, but even their website is very handy as a tool for salespeople as well, because you can quite literally search for a connector while you're on a call with a client. I don't know how you feel about that, Vicky and Grace, but it honestly, it really does help with the power of knowing. It just instills some sort of it instills confidence, and that's what we've definitely gotten from Tray, and we've absolutely seen growth within our company from a customer acquisition perspective, new business, and then retention, and improving on MRR by having Tray there as our partner, which has been brilliant. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to power through hopefully a couple more questions that we've got. And this is an interesting one, and we probably need someone, if whoever asked this question, feel free to come and speak to us after, but it is an interesting one. So how can I convince our leadership team to invest in integration for hybrid events when budgets are tight and we only run 2 annual events per year with 120 attendees each? First thing I would say to that question is, what integration are you after? That's probably the most important question that we would need clarifying on that. I guess what I would suggest in terms of convincing, because I'm probably in a position where I have to convince Stu to do a lot of things and spend a lot of money, but it's about mapping out what your ROI is. But again, within the events industry, it's not just down to return on investment, it's return on engagement. It's that data, it's that analytics. How do you go about compiling the persona of the person that you're targeting? What are you going to get out of potentially putting that investment into those events and that integration specifically? I don't know, Grace, or anyone, sorry, if got a response to that as well.
I was going to say another texture to that, I think, is those 100 to 120 attendees each, like how valuable, kind of an extension of your point, like what is the potential value that you could mine out of those attendees by having a more fuller picture of their profiles, and then the subsequent marketing and the fidelity of the content you're going to be sharing and sending them afterwards. Because I think it's one thing to get, you know, data from those, you know, 2 events, but if that data is patchy or it's not as rich as it possibly could be because you haven't got certain systems that have been capturing interactions or feedback or engagement of that attendee throughout the event, I would say that actually there's a world where perhaps if the different systems that you are using to track that attendee's sort of like pre-registration, registration sort of event activity, you would have a much fuller picture and therefore a much richer view of your customers that you could then mine for better returns, I would say.
So I agree.
I think you can also add to that, I think that doing nothing isn't free, because what typically people are doing today is manually taking time, downloading CSVs, moving data around, putting it in other places. That takes loads of time, and the most expensive thing in any company is the people. So by utilizing a process and a product like Tray, you end up massively reducing your operational costs, which actually has a long-term benefit for the company. And actually, I would say there's almost no choice today. You have to do some types of integrations, otherwise you just have lots of people scurrying around with pieces of paper, and that's not the future.
Definitely. I agree.
I was just going to say, whoever's asked that question, we've got quite an interesting kind of like we call it like a value questionnaire, so I'm happy to share it with whoever's asked that question afterwards to kind of help you build the case to invest in integrations.
We'll be here for a little bit afterwards as well, and WorkCast also has a standard E28 if you wanted to pop by and not just have it straight after. You're more than welcome to pop over. Again, conscious of time because I've just had the little 10-minute marker. Why is Tray better than other integration platforms like Zapier, and what are the major differences? This is an interesting question because we actually had this conversation between ourselves yesterday.
Yeah, I think we kind of half mentioned this when we were deciding why we use Tray. And interestingly, we also build integrations for our internal teams to help with internal processes, to take away people's time so we can spend them on our customers, essentially. And there were a couple of integrations that we used Zapier for moving to Tray. And it's a really intuitive platform. But what we found through using it is our API was much easier to manipulate and get the data that we needed out of it and have those kind of markers on it through the Tray platform. And we could really kind of choose what we wanted out of there. And I've built the same integration and moved it away from Zapier into Tray, and I've actually improved it through that. I've added different options to it. It integrates with like 4 different things. It's a beautiful integration. But yeah, I would say that's the main difference from my perspective.
Perfect. Brilliant.
I think that total cost of ownership thing is really important. You know, the thing about any integration, platforms update all the time, so you have to keep updating them, otherwise they become old and stale very, very quickly. And the vast majority of off-the-shelf integrations out there are just old and stale and barely work. So if you do an integration, you have to understand that you probably need to update it every 6 months. And that's what a platform like Tray brings. It's that total cost of ownership improvement.
We have another question which says, why have you chosen to invest in Tray rather than going solo? I feel like we may have answered that by proxy with the questions, but I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on why we've...
Engineers are a very difficult resource and they're a very expensive resource, and it's a really, one way to think about it is it's a low-code solution. So it happens to do integrations, but what it really is a low-code solution.
Brill. And again, conscious of time, but we did have another question that I know someone from the stall, the exhibition, asked it earlier, I think it was yesterday afternoon, and one of their questions was passing data around. Does that cause compliance issues in this realm of things?
Yeah, certainly happy to take that from Tray's side. So when we look at, obviously, Tray as a platform, We're a SOC 2 Type 2 compliance solution, if you're familiar with that, which effectively is external validation about how we handle the data that's going through us. But of course, we've got all of the typical things you would hope for, so encryption throughout the data moving between the systems. And one of the big things that we of course advocate for is this idea of least privilege, so giving enough access to get the data that you need, but nothing more than that when it's required. And so I think one of the big things when we're working, we work quite recently with a challenger bank, and we went through their whole process around data moving around, so you can start to see that if a bank's happy to use a tool like Tray or an iPass itself, then of course there's a whole host of things that are going to come there. But I think just having that confidence to know that you're only given the right access, the data that is moving through is, one, transitory as well, so it's not staying on Tray, it's kind of flowing through Tray to get to where it needs to go as well. That's another really important point. But just making sure that when it does go through us, it's as safe as possible.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I would come into that as well and just say from our perspective, obviously data is so important to us and our customers. And for the HubSpot example that we showed earlier, that's an embedded solution that we have through Tray. So it actually shows on our platform where our customers can just log in with their own data themselves. So we don't touch it, we don't see it, and it's encrypted through Tray as well. So it just makes us and our customers just a lot more secure in the safety of that data.
Yes, I would agree. And Grace, we spoke about this yesterday, but due diligence is quite key. Whether your company is small, medium, large, you've got to have that covered. And due diligence can sometimes seem a little bit daunting. We're talking about a lot of data, and what is it in transmission, in transit, and me and Grace are kind of like, what is this? What is this jargon? But a lot of people might be sitting there and thinking the same thing. How do I get guidance on what I should be asking for, what I should know about when I'm looking at integrations and marrying two platforms together? There's obviously regional differences between Europe, between America, so there's those challenges as well. There are companies and consultants out there that can help you compile a due diligence questionnaire that you can put to your integration choices. For example, I deal with the due diligence questionnaires quite a lot, and then I have help from Vicky, from our engineers, head of engineering, head of product, to really explain and put our best foot forward when it comes to reassuring people that data is looked after when it's in our care, but also while it's in transit between the two platforms as well. Grace, I don't know what your take is on that.
No, I completely agree. And Luke referenced earlier, we are working, as a platform, we are working with some of the biggest UK challenger banks. And again, that due dil, caused me a lot of grey hairs and gave me extra wrinkles. But it's again, I think it's just a real badge of honour from our side that it's the platform is kind of it's all belts and braces have been applied. And I think to your point, nobody wants the repercussions of getting your data sort of management and protection wrong can be really, it's not just from a monetary perspective, but from a branding and a reputation perspective, you just can't afford to mess that up. Exactly, the integrity. So I think certainly I would say, if for any of you that are looking to potentially explore the market for an iPass partner, look at who that partner already works with, look at the testimonials, and then look at, we all have a duty of care, I would say, to be able to be really, really transparent about our data security statements and policies. So they should be on everybody's websites.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, I think that is potentially the last of the questions, unless anyone has any last minute ones that they want to throw in. But we will be available here at the back of the stage. If you want to call us that question in particular about that hybrid event and integration, please let us know, because we'd definitely like to help you out a bit more on that one as well. But thank you everyone for joining, and thanks to all of my panellists. This was our first talk at an event, as you could probably have told. You're like, no, not at all. But thank you so much for being with us, listening to us. But any questions or anything like that, just give us a shout. We're happy to talk after the talk. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers.